Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan, and today we continue our breakdown of the fourth year of the Clone Wars with what I believe is one of the most tragic events in this entire conflict. Anyway guys, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of the series. There was so much hope in Mandalore. For the first time in their long, troubled history, the Mandalorians were able to suppress the violent and warlike tendencies of their culture and focus more on economic and social development. At the forefront of this evolution in Mandalorian culture was Duchess Satine Kryze and her new Mandalorian party. They had just emerged out of the chaos of civil war a few decades ago. They were fighting against the more traditionalist Death Watch faction. These Death Watch warriors held on to an ancient code and way of life. A way of life that defined the Mandalorian people and helped them survive countless tragedies and cataclysmic events that were often caused by their warlike nature. Simply put, the Mandalorians were tough as nails, but they were so focused on being tough that they failed to develop other parts of their society other than their military prowess. Ultimately, the Mandalorians picked fights that they ultimately had no hope winning. And the latest and greatest blow had come from none other than the Jedi Order and the Republic, who launched a devastating preemptive attack on Mandalore, rendering the surface desolate and uninhabitable. While this behavior might seem uncharacteristic coming from the quote good guys of the galaxy, fear of Mandalore's power was great. Extreme events lead to extreme reactions, of course. Post-World War I, the Western European powers were so adamant about avoiding another global conflict that they let that mad Führer and his mustache march across the Sudetenland, plunging the world into the very conflict they wanted to avoid. Duchess Satine Kryze was a well-intentioned leader, but constant warfare had scarred her view of the world, and so she would adopt an extreme stance of pacifism, which on paper might seem more harmless than its antithesis, but is actually equally as irrational. Duchess Satine would try her best to keep Mandalore out of the war. She would even lead the Council of Neutral Systems, a coalition of like-minded but unfortunately powerless planets. But ultimately, her pursuit of peace at all costs would be her downfall. Many worlds would suffer due to the Clone Wars. Mandalore was amongst them, but Mandalore's suffering didn't come initially from blasters or proton torpedoes. The war had yet to reach the planet. Instead, it was economic hardship. Mandalore depended heavily on the import of food and other organic supplies. As we mentioned before, Mandalore's surface was completely destroyed, and the citizens of the planet had to live in sealed domes to prevent all that toxic waste from getting into their living areas. Mandalore would not receive aid from either the Republic or the Separatists because of their neutral stance, and it would weaken the planet significantly and test the people's loyalty. Before we begin, today's episode is brought to you by Surfshark Virtual Private Network. Everything we do nowadays is somehow connected to the internet. All sorts of companies are taking our information from these connections and selling it to the highest bidder. A great way to take control of who can access your private information is by using a service like Surfshark. Buy this app and you can install it on an unlimited number of devices. And not only will people be unable to access your personal information because Surfshark has encrypted it, they also won't know what country you're in because your IP address will be hidden as well, which is why Surfshark can get you around those pesky geo restrictions. This means you can use services like Netflix or sports streaming anywhere you go just by changing your virtual location. Surfshark can even help you circumvent internet firewalls when you're traveling in countries that like to censor internet sites like Facebook and YouTube. If this sounds like something you're interested in, try Surfshark for 30 days money back guaranteed. Also use our promo code GENTECH, that's all caps, to get 83% off your purchase along with 3 extra months for free. Check out the description down below for more information. Well, thank you for your patience. On to the rest of the video. The Vizslas are quite a famous clan in Mandalorian circles. A lot of their fame and influence comes from one of their ancestors, Tar Vizsla. He was a Mandalore, or the leader of all Mandalorians, but at the same time a former Jedi Knight, an extremely rare occurrence. Underneath his leadership, the Mandalorian people were united and prosperous. By the time of 19 BBY, his descendant Pre Vizsla was leading what was left of the Death Watch faction. In 21 BBY, Pre Vizsla had launched a failed campaign to overthrow the new Mandalorians by using terrorist attacks to destabilize Duchess Satine's rule. Pre Vizsla had previously aligned himself with Count Dooku. Together they had hoped to trigger a Republic military intervention on Mandalore, which would allow Death Watch to swoop in and defeat the invaders and claim the throne. The strategy fell apart, and so did the alliance between Death Watch and Dooku. And now Death Watch was sort of wandering around the galaxy, wondering what to do next. On a routine patrol, a Death Watch unit picks up an escape pod and finds two Zabrak brothers inside, former Sith Lord Maul and his brother Savage Opress. The two brothers had narrowly escaped a skirmish against Obi-Wan Kenobi and Hondo Ohnaka, and they had to use an escape pod in order to survive when their ship crashed. Vizsla's second, Bo-Katan, advises him to kill the brothers. She sees their lightsabers and senses that they're far too dangerous to deal with. But Pre Vizsla sees potentially a very powerful ally in the Zabraks. Better yet, Vizsla and Maul share a very common enemy, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi had sliced Maul in half more than a decade ago during the Naboo blockade, and Obi-Wan Kenobi also happened to be a close friend of Duchess Satine Kryze and had interfered with the Death Watch coup. This hate unites these two groups in a very unholy alliance. Now the Death Watch has access to essentially two hero units equipped with insane force powers. All they really need is an army to help them obtain their goal. As we mentioned before, Death Watch wanted a Republic military intervention to justify their own invasion and takeover of Mandalore. I mean, even Pre Vizsla realized that he couldn't just attack the new Mandalorians without any cause, because the people would probably rebel against him. Death Watch is still greatly outnumbered by the new Mandalorians as well. And so Vizsla and Maul come up with an alternative idea. They would create a massive army of underworld criminals and have them flood Mandalore and create chaos. At which point Death Watch will kind of swoop in on their jetpacks and save the day and kick the new Mandalorians out of office for incompetence. And so, with the Zabrak brothers in tow, Pre Vizsla heads to the Black Suns first, one of the largest criminal organizations in the galaxy. Their proposal for an alliance with the Black Sun leaders is met with scorn initially, but Savage Opress manages to relieve them all of their heads, leading to a quick appointment of a new leader who is more than eager to join the Death Watch's cause. News of the swift fall of the Black Suns reaches the ears of the Pike Syndicate. They're another criminal organization notorious for their drug smuggling operations. They fly to the Death Watch's camp and pledge loyalty in order to avoid bloodshed. Next up is the Hutt Collective, rulers of a massive empire bordering the Outer Rim. The Hutts, as usual, have not only managed to stay out of the war, they're actually profiting from both sides. The Hutt Council employ a team of bounty hunters to protect themselves, but not even the mighty Jabba is able to defeat Maul and Savage Opress. Within a relatively short time, Death Watch has created an invasion army of thugs and criminals. They call themselves the Shadow Collective. The Shadow Collective sneak right past Mandalore's meager defenses in cargo ships, and the Mandalorian Guard, who are essentially a police force, were quickly overwhelmed and overrun. The criminal syndicate quickly captures important infrastructure and begins looting and pillaging the capital city of Sundari. Duchess Satine Kryze attempts to calm down her people in a public appearance, but is confronted by Pre Vizsla, who swoops in, just as planned, with his Death Watch and saves the day. Satine Kryze is removed by Vizsla and imprisoned. Bo-Katan informs the Mandalorian people that the Duchess and her government has fled in their moment of need. It's at this point Pre Vizsla's true colors are shown. He breaks his alliance with Maul and Savage and has them arrested and thrown into prison. Something that Savage Opress predicted that Death Watch would do. The only problem is that Mandalorian prisons are not designed to hold Force users, and Maul and Savage break out shortly after and confront Pre Vizsla in the throne room. You see, Maul understood the Mandalorian ways and their respect of power and might over all else. The Death Watch believed in the ancient right of combat challenge to determine the ruler of Mandalore. And so Maul challenges Pre Vizsla to a duel, something that he cannot deny. And so, wielding the famous Darksaber, Vizsla, who is a mere mortal without Force powers, attempts to duel one of the most talented Sith assassins alive. The result is not surprising, and Pre Vizsla's rule comes to an end shortly after it begins. Bo-Katan and her Night Owl sub-faction are the only ones who don't bend knee to the new Mandalore. And for the first time in Mandalore's history, the planet is ruled by an outsider. Former Prime Minister Almec is reinstated as a puppet by the brothers, and darkness falls on Mandalore. Obi-Wan Kenobi might seem like one of the most rule-abiding Jedi in the entire Order, but the reality is we only think that because he is the master of one of the most rebellious Jedi, Anakin Skywalker. Long ago, when Obi-Wan Kenobi was still a Padawan and his master Qui-Gon Jinn was alive, the two were deployed for a year to Mandalore in order to protect Duchess Satine Kryze from insurgents during that civil war we were mentioning before. It was during this time that Obi-Wan Kenobi fell in love with Satine, and had she asked him to stay with her, he would have left the Jedi Order and never looked back. The Jedi kind of have this no attachment and no love policy. But Duchess Satine didn't ask Obi-Wan to commit to her, and the two went their separate ways. The two would remain friends, of course, and their love would never actually die. But both individuals were dedicated to the causes they had devoted their lives to. Duchess Satine manages to escape from captivity. She's helped by her nephew Corky and her sister Bo-Katan. But shortly after, she's captured again. But before Maul's super commandos can grab her, she manages to send Obi-Wan Kenobi a very Leia-like message, asking for help. Obi-Wan Kenobi receives the message along with Grandmaster Yoda and Ki-Adi. The Potato and Avocado Jedi both agree that they must wait for Senate approval before moving against Maul and his coup. Obi-Wan Kenobi, in a rare moment of defiance, refuses to wait and quickly heads to Mandalore using Anakin's old civilian freighter, the Twilight. Obi-Wan arrives and manages to knock out a super commando and disguises himself in that armor. He manages to find his way to Satine's cell, and they embrace for a brief moment before they attempt to break out. Fortunately, the two never make it back to the Twilight and are once again captured. You see, Maul had foreseen Obi-Wan's brash rescue attempt. He'd been waiting for this moment ever since Obi-Wan Kenobi sent him flying down that reactor shaft over Naboo. Maul doesn't want to simply kill Obi-Wan Kenobi. Instead, he wants Obi-Wan Kenobi to feel and share in his pain. And so he guts Satine Kryze right in front of him, and she dies in his arms, along with a life they could have shared together. Darth Maul orders Obi-Wan to be locked up so that he can just wallow in his misery. Luckily for him, Bo-Katan and the Night Owls have been watching him from afar this entire time, and they manage to intercept his guards and release him. For one reason or another, Maul's execution of Satine Kryze creates a disturbance in the Force, which is felt by his former master Darth Sidious. The Dark Lord arrives in his Sith form and finds Maul sitting on a throne. Maul quickly kneels in terror and tries to hide the fact that he has taken on another apprentice, his brother. Darth Sidious is impressed that the Zabrak has survived his injuries, but now he sees him and his brother as a threat, and quickly the three engage in lightsaber combat. Savage Opress never really stood a chance. He's completely outclassed, and he's quickly killed by Darth Sidious. Maul doesn't stand much of a chance either. The sheer power of Darth Sidious's Force abilities pins him to the ground, ending Maul's very short reign of Mandalore as well. In this short period of time, the leadership for Mandalore has changed 3 times, and unfortunately things are going to get a lot worse for this planet. Guys, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our Clone Wars Year 4 coverage. Thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.